Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the fourth session in the AIA in California's Fire Response Series. Nothing about us without us is for us. Altadena from the ground up. As you get settled, please feel free to say hello and where you're joining from in the chat today. To qualify for continuing education credit, AIA California provides the learning objectives for every webinar and includes them in the presentation that can be made available online. A few quick housekeeping reminders. Today's session is being recorded and qualifies for one AIA HSW learning unit. For those who stay on and watch live, AIA California staff will report these units to AIA for you and will send you follow-up information on how you can request a certificate of completion. We plan to have roughly 40 minutes of discussion and 15 minutes for Q&A from the audience at the end of today's session. Please be constructive in your comments and questions to help foster a positive learning experience for everyone. We are grateful to have two fantastic speakers participating in today's session. I'm honored to introduce Charles T. Bryant, Principal and Architect at Massbuild Design Studio. Massbuild Design Solutions, Incorporated is an award-winning architecture, interior design, and planning firm established in 1996, located in Pasadena, California. Massbuild is dedicated to high-quality, full-service design solutions, incorporating new construction and modification of existing structures. Project types include residential, multifamily, commercial, and institutional, both national and international. Massbuild is staffed with licensed, seasoned architects and interior designers with years of combined and varied experience and comprehensive backgrounds. Mr. Bryant has 40 years of experience in design and construction. He is a past president of SoCal NOMA, or the National Organization of Minority Architects, and past president of Pasadena Foothill, AIA. Prior to co-founding Massbuild Design Solutions, he led the award-winning firm of Charles T. Bryant and Associates. Mr. Bryant has long provided services to underserved and marginalized communities to include communities of color, senior citizens, veterans, and housing insecurity. He is also a resident of Altadena. His home is one of the many casualties of the Eaton fire, and he is in the process of assisting his community in the rebuilding process. We are also incredibly fortunate to have Stephen Lewis here today. Mr. Lewis achieved national prominence by entwining three critical areas of practice. He co-owned the architecture firm Raw International, and since leaving after 20 years, has gone on to hold leadership positions at a number of successful firms. He is a tireless advocate for justice and equity for people in communities of color, and his achievements including having served as national president of NOMA, being a recipient of the prestigious Whitney M. Young Jr. Service Award from the AIA, and having served Detroit residents as the urban design director within the city's planning and development department. Mr. Lewis resides in Altadena, where he and his wife raised their daughter, and he is actively involved in supporting neighbors and community groups working on fire recovery. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to Charles and Stephen, and I will now let them take the floor for their discussion. Thank you so much.
And so we've done this before. We did an all-nighter at the office. Okay, we just stayed at the office all night. So about 4:30 that morning, she got a call from her friend of hers, a neighbor, said, "Hey, my lawn is on fire. You guys better, try to get up here and see what you can get." So at 4:30, we decided that we would try to drive to Altadena. And this is the scary part of this. I don't know how people got out after 3:30 a.m. because there were no lights and it was like raining fire. You look to the left, houses on fire. You look to the right, houses on fire. And the people who drove out of that,
Buster.
let me tell you, they were very fortunate. So anyway, that's our story. And we did go back up about 9 o'clock. Luckily, we had a truck. We could drive through the down poles, trees, wires. And it was an obstacle course, but we made it up to the house. And I do have videos of what was remaining and what was still on fire. And one thing that, and I told the people, the students, I won't be using railroad ties anymore for retaining walls.
Oh, man. Lessons learned, right? Lessons learned.
Yeah.
Well, so to that point, if I understand correctly, you're going to be redesigning the house. You're going to come back on the property. But you're also getting calls from other residents who are asking for your services to help them get back on their land. Is that
right? Oh, I am. Now, you know, this is the thing. And during the time that I've been in business, the residential design was not necessarily my bread and butter at all. I mean, you know, we would do projects from time to time for friends, relatives, neighbors, uh, one or two a year. But looks like now I'll have a lot of houses to do. I mean, I think there's a way to do it and make it profitable without losing your shirt. So that's what we're doing. And so one of the things that I'm finding is that many people don't understand the process.
Mhm.
Um, they don't know what the next step is. So that's one of the things that we have to counsel them on. You know, they don't understand the process of design, the whole delivery thing. And I'm finding this out. So this is what we're going to have to communicate to people. If they don't understand the delivery process from design through plan check and permitting, they're going to go to the contractor. And so we
Right.
have to be there to explain it to them. They go straight to the contractors. This is the person who's going to build it. So therefore they know exactly what to do. And they're not thinking about, you know, the benefit of hiring an architect.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, some people can afford to hire us as architects, but others are still finding out where they are with insurance and the real financial ability to come back. So there
Mm.
are some good actors and some bad actors posing as good actors we've experienced thus far, because you and I have both been very involved in the SoCal NOMA, Altadena Rebuild Coalition, the AIA's Ask an Architect, even the Foothill Catalog Group, so many groups working toward being of assistance to neighbors. Um, Tell me about your thoughts on how people can make it through if they're underinsured.
Well, this is the thing. Many people are underinsured in Altadena. And it could be because, you know, maybe 10 years ago, their house was worth 400,000 or 500,000. Now that house is worth 1.5 million or more. You know, Altadena used to be the best kept secret. I don't know if you know
Mhm.
that, but the prices on houses were inexpensive, and then people caught on. So I think what the problem is, there's many people who are underinsured. There's many people who have no insurance at all. There are some people who have good insurance. Now we have a gap here with the underinsured. Now the uninsured, okay, they may have paid their house off. Maybe they own it, the land straight out. Well, there's SBA loans. SBA is now, they have loans out for individuals who have fire loss up to $500,000 at 2.5%. You can't beat that. So I do advise them to take advantage of that. They have until May 30th to take advantage of that loan. They could use it right away. If they use it right away, they don't have to start paying on it right away. Or they can let it
Mm,
sit for 12
mm,
months. And if
mhm.
they need it, they can use it. So that's really a benefit of that loan.
Yeah.
I was also at a meeting yesterday at the federal building where they have various lenders, excuse me, and the idea was to come up with ideas and concepts of how to, number one, extend that loan, that process through SBA. And some of the banks, they have their own way of doing this. And so we're trying to get them to push this, drive it into the Altadena area and let people understand that these vehicles are available for them.
These products
Um,
could close the gap between what their insurance will provide and what they'll need to actually rebuild.
Exactly, close the gap.
Yeah.
And like I say, they could, if they may need it, they may not. Some may need it, and some may not need it. So we'll see what happens. The other
Yeah.
idea
I
is
don't know if
to,
you know, I'm sorry. I
Mhm.
don't know if you know Bob Milton, REM Engineering.
Yeah, I know
And
Bob.
Bob used to run the kids softball, the baseball league up in Farnsworth Park.
That's
Um,
right.
well, I interviewed Bob and his son Matthew, who's an architect or an aspiring architect,
Yes. Hmm.
and they have multiple losses.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Bob was proud to tell us that he had a replacement insurance policy. So regardless of what that cost for replacement arrives at, he's covered. And
Good.
so, but then he said, I don't know if I have the time to stay engaged to make this happen. Where my son Matthew is going to definitely come back and be there. I may have to go somewhere else to enjoy some of what I have left of my life, and then if it all gets done, I'll come back. That
All
kind of.
right. Well,
So
that's one way to look at it, and I appreciate that it's at least positive like that. But let's face it, many people are not coming back.
yeah,
Especially right after the fire. We've been telling people just hold on, think about this before
yeah,
you make a rash decision.
yeah,
And
yeah,
but many people have already made that decision. I've seen people, just strangers, talking about the fire. I'm not coming back. Bottom line,
yeah,
I'm 80 years old and I don't have time to rebuild. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
hopefully in many cases their children will be taking advantage of that. But in many
right,
cases they're just selling.
right.
You know.
Well, the county, we're unincorporated Los Angeles County, so we're sort of
Mhm.
down low on the totem pole.
Mm.
But Catherine Barger has been holding her weekly meetings. She's been bringing together a lot of resources. We've heard from LA County Planning, from LA County Safety. Um, what do you and our other residents, our neighbors, want from the county? Are we getting what we need from them, in your opinion, or is there something that they could do different or better?
And Steve, I think you were at the AIA event at Parsons
Mhm.
a few weeks ago. I was there too, and you heard what they said. They said they'll have these drawings turned around in 10 days.
Right.
I was at the planning department. Yes, they did say that. I was at the planning department. I think it was Thursday of last week, and I wanted to make sure I was the first one there, and I was. And they had this long desk with one planner, and looking back at me, and it had already accumulated to about 10 people sitting waiting. And I looked them back at me, and I looked at them, and I said, I understand the county is going to have everything done in 10 days. I said, how long is this review going to take? And this is from my own house, by the way. They said
Mm.
about 3 weeks.
Ooh.
Okay. And I said, has anybody talked to you about uh, what's been said in these meetings from Catherine Barger and the people representing the county? And he said, no. So they hadn't even communicated that to him. So what we want is what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, what we want is to eliminate the plan check fees and permitting fees. So that's what I would like to see, because they haven't touched on that. They haven't even discussed it. And I
And
think though that would speed things along. Right now, we're going to just be dragging along here.
yeah. And I think you would agree that what we're hearing from most of the people that we've engaged with are similar things. I've been saying to all the groups that I've been speaking to that we really need to stabilize the patient before we administer the treatment, which is to say that all of us who are out there developing these, what I call treatments or solutions to rebuild, are really anxious to be able to share that with residents. And yet some of our residents aren't really ready to receive that information quite yet. And we need to get them in a state of mind where because of the volume and magnitude of information that they're being flooded with, they need assistance in trying to guide themselves forward. And that begins with the establishment of some trust, which
Right.
is a tough order. And I think particularly in the community of Black seniors in West Altadena, this is overwhelming. And
Mhm.
the niche that we've carved out through NOMA is to be able to pay, through our cultural competence, particular attention to their needs. And it's difficult. And I might just share, if I could, just for a minute. Is that visible? So this is,
There it is.
yeah, this is the rebuild package that SoCal NOMA has offered to residents. This is just a draft of it, where we basically explain how to use a document, a basic timetable, just a lot of information that an owner can sign up for and receive. basic information about processes, the coalition, how to use the document, and I'll get to it, the steps. So this has been, as I've heard from people who've taken advantage of this, been very helpful to help clarify things. Then we look at their particular site. And in this case, you can see ghosted in this yellow outline of that property.
It's Carla's property.
Yeah, right. This is real. And here we provide for each resident their aerial of what it was. And, you know, then a plethora of lot description zoning information that they can use to be prepared to talk to an architect and or a builder. And so this is just, I think, very useful to know that we have this tool. And I know that also that AIAPF has another tool. And so all these groups, I've described this as running in parallel in our own lanes, like we're in a 100-yard dash. And I'm suggesting that we run more like a relay, where you know what leg of the race you're run best. You receive the baton, you run your leg, and you pass the baton. And so we can gain some efficiencies if we're able to continue to pull together leaders from the various groups that are out there working towards similar aims.
Absolutely. And I don't think AIA or NOMA should be trying to take the whole ball of wax on our own. And we have to assume that there's other people out there who could help stabilize the patient. You know, the patients are already stabilized. The ones who aren't stabilized, they're saying, I'm okay, go to the next one, you know, and so that's what we need to do right now. There's people who need to build right now. They're saying, what is my next step? And that's one of the questions that I constantly ask. Okay, your next step is to get a set of plans approved and get your bidding going, get ready to hire a contractor. Those are the words that I say. You know, I don't say go to a contractor like so many people you might hear that often.
Yeah. I think for a number of people, a design build approach might be most, I guess, beneficial to control cost and to have from the very beginning a sense of what we're getting into, because right now, God knows whether we have tariffs or don't have tariffs, but we know that the cost of construction could, you know, vary greatly depending on what happens at the federal level with our allies and partners, particularly in Canada and Mexico. So those are unknown.
Well, Steve, you're gonna have arguments with that approach as well, because with that design build approach, you could have fixed prices from contractors who will already have a number in their head. They might say, well, this is going to cost you $700 a square foot. And, you know, if you do the design bid build, it might be $350 or $450 a square foot. And many contractors are working in the Malibu and Pacific Palisades, and so they're using those prices. Where Malibu and Pacific Palisades, they have a different prevailing wage and they have a different living wage. And so that labor cost is going to be extremely different than what it would be in Altadena. So that's why I would be, don't get me wrong, I don't think design build is wrong. I just think that you have contractors have an opportunity to take advantage of it. And we have to be careful of that.
Yeah, I hear you. So what do you think the biggest challenges are to the restoration of Altadena as we knew it, as a place of culture? I mean, I'll be honest, Charles, you know, I've been there since 1980, right? And if you would have asked any of us the day before the fire, what percentage of Altadena is Black? We probably would have said, well, 50 or 60%, because the culture is so prevalent. But in reality, it's 18% today.
That's right.
Right. And so because people who—
But it was 43% back in the 80s when you moved in.
70, yeah, right. It was. But, you know, the people coming in have somewhat embraced the spirit and culture of the place.
Right.
And they haven't tried to, you know, sort of take it over and rebrand it so much. There are a few new places that have popped up and this, that, and the other thing. But, you know, we have these kind of iconic places that everybody is from the past and the present have adopted as their own. The places like the Foxes or Webster's or, you know, Steve's Bike Shop, or all these businesses that got, you know, burned along Lake Avenue, and even
That's
the Little
right.
Red Hen on Fair Oaks, which I used to walk around the corner to, that broke my heart. But
That's
Little
right.
Red Hen is coming back, and so is Amara, another restaurant. So these are good ways to send a signal to the community, whether the community is physically separated from the place and comes back to the mothership whenever possible, to just, you know, establish and reclaim their presence there as part of that community, to see some representation of those things, even in the interim before they're fully rebuilt. Maybe there's a food truck where there was a restaurant, and it has the same branding as the restaurant had. So you say, oh my God, you know, that has been lost physically, but it's here and it will come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is the thing, to maintain the diversity, somehow keep the diversity. And that's why you see a lot of the organizations, or they're talking about land banking, right?
Mhm.
In order to keep that diversity that Altadena had. And that was one of the beauties of Altadena, is that you had ethnic groups of all kinds here. You're going to see, because it's in such a close proximity, you're going to see everybody. And it's very interesting to see how everybody got along too. I mean, it wasn't I think that's what made the community. But
Mhm.
the land banking, there's groups that right now I'm working with, a couple of groups. One is is called the Legacy Land Project, and that's in order to keep the ethnic population kind of like it was. Now, this could be a pipe dream, because
Yeah, we don't
developers
know.
could come in and buy up everything for sale, and
Yeah.
then put a gate around it, and you'll have another Lavinia. Not there's anything wrong with Lavinia. Some people like that, but it's kind of dead to me. But anyway, um,
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to avoid, is to keep it at least as it was, if not better. You know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Altadena got a ton of media coverage in the weeks following. But that's
Mhm.
sort of trailed off now. There's still media people who are checking in, um, and people like Josie Wong from, well, I still call it KPCC, but Eliast, who reports every Saturday morning, has a show. And Josie and her husband and daughter lost their home as well. And here she is, having had her home burned down and having to report on it. So it's really complicated for those of us who still have to work, right? And yet we have to deal with this both physically, economically, but emotionally, the
Emotionally,
trauma of that loss, right?
yeah.
What, yeah, how do we go forward?
You know, and that's the thing. Some people don't have the problems that we have, and that's one of the things that we have to face. I have a client, you know, Pasadena was affected too, not like Altadena, even though the fire started in Pasadena. There's only about 150 homes. Anyway, I'm doing one of these homes, and the people, the owners of this house, they were able to buy another house
Mm,
that they could live in,
mm,
so they're not worried about the time. Uh,
mhm,
and they also have another house in Texas, so
mhm,
I mean that's not an issue to them. And so you're gonna have people, and some of the people, like I say, they were out of their house. If they were uninsured, then they have no insurance that will pay for where they're living now. And it
mm,
could
mm, mm.
be that what they're paying is mortgage prices with today's standards, the way rent is, you know, and maybe they have to house a whole family, an
Yeah.
extended family. So, yeah, these are the things that we're dealing with now, and we don't have all the answers. Uh, One thing that I really appreciate is that the Sentinel had that big event at the
Mhm,
Hilton Hotel a few weeks ago. It was over 600 people that showed up, and they had lenders, they had insurance, they had contractors, they had architects, us,
mhm,
and
mhm.
people were able to get many of their questions answered, and you know, a direction to follow from that. There's still a lot of people out there, but of the people who attended, I think it was really helpful to have everybody there at one location.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things that has been talked about quite a bit is the fact that the county is allowing under your uh, replacement house permit, the same permit can cover an ADU, an accessory
Yes.
dwelling unit on your property.
Hmm.
And if you're underinsured and you reach a settlement, they might allow you to get that ADU installed and connected to utilities on your property as a way to get back on your land and then
Right.
try to make the primary house reconstruction work one way or another. What are you hearing about that, and what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a good idea. Okay, because they had already approved ADUs anyway. So people will move back into they can build an ADU, they can get a prefabricated ADU or do a custom design or whatever, move it onto their property, because this will also help with people who are aging in place, extended family situations. As you know, we already have a housing shortage anyway. It will keep their relatives or their offspring in the Pasadena area to help them out. And they could even switch at some point. Maybe the older generation might move back to the ADU or whatever. And
Right.
I think it would be helpful and useful. The only
Hey,
drawback that I
Charles,
see on this, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say that's me and you getting moved to the ADU while our kids occupy the big house. You
I'm
know.
not going. But the only thing I see that could be wrong with this is that they may decide to just stay in the ADU and never build back a house. So
Yeah.
that's the only drawback I see
Yeah.
in this in them permitting this. So we'll see what happens.
There's the SB9 and lot split
Hmm.
by right that
Right.
could allow that density and the leveraging of that for economic benefit for homeowners.
That's a good point. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that, that if they build the ADU, they can use an SB9 to actually split the lot, stay in the ADU or add to it, and then sell the other part of the property as a separate property. Yes, that's
Yeah.
an option.
So all these things, you know, we're learning every day something new about this puzzle with these
Hmm.
pieces trying to get put in place.
That's
And
right.
I think, as I say about our um, diversity, equity, inclusion goals that we maybe can't talk about so much these days, but to hell, we think about them every day.
Yeah.
You know, every action, large or small, and in this case, every house put back or ADU equates to a tiny piece of an infinite jigsaw puzzle. You know, in terms of Altadena being the final puzzle. If enough of those pieces get put in, it will reveal the real picture, the image of what we're going to get when this is all done. And I
Mm.
think that's overlaid with the cultural elements that we've been talking about. You know, you got JPL, you got the Zorthian Ranch. I mean, you got everybody from a rocket scientist to a WPA era artist,
Yeah.
all mashed up in this community. And we walk up to the barbershop, to Tangles and Locks, or up the street to
The
Fox's.
library.
It's a walk
Yeah.
to the library, which is a jewel, and it's back to
Hmm.
reopen, thankfully.
Yeah.
So how do we preserve? And I know we can't really answer that, but I think that the community's will, first, the recognition of what a special place it is,
Hmm.
was,
That's right.
is being echoed almost as a precursor to the act of rebuilding. It's like the maintenance of the rich culture, and we have to
Hmm.
find ways to get that in place early, so that as physical building takes place, along with it, there's a cultural rebuilding. And places like the Altadena Library serve us very well as these sort of nodes where we can assemble. The artists had a huge event there a couple of years ago that filled the library to the brim.
Hmm.
The artists are being on their own about their situations. Many lost their studios with all of their work, and they have exhibitions that they have to produce for coming up. And I was talking to Mark Stephen Greenfield yesterday, who's an amazing artist friend, telling me about these artists who've had to rent studio space so they can just produce work to meet their obligation for exhibitions. So, I mean, we each have our stories. It's crazy. You know, in our case, you know, we're waiting all this time just to have the sanitation and sanitizing of the contents house itself, and feeling somewhat guilty that we're taking resources away from those who lost everything and need to rebuild. So talk about a little bit of survivor's guilt in there. I feel for you.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. It's got to be done. But what you're saying there about that, you got the Altadena Heritage Group, you have the Pasadena Heritage Group. There's a lot of history there that people are not aware of. Was it back in the 1800s where they had that, I don't know, what do you call them, a vernacular or something like they use on the
Oh,
ski lift?
yeah,
It would,
the funicular.
yeah, it would lift you up to, there was a hotel on the top of a mountain low. So you
Yeah,
had that way to get there, and then you also had a train. And I had this history book that get burned up in the fire, but it was amazing to see that picture of them sitting on a train going up the side of a mountain, and they
yeah,
never had an accident.
yeah.
So I think
The
that was
hotel burned
amazing.
down, unfortunately, but I hiked up there one day, and it's a long way up.
Yes, it is.
There are little sort of residual elements of a rail and wheels from the funicular car.
That's right.
But you know, that was the train would come up Lake Avenue to the depot building, which is still there, right?
Yep.
And the passengers would disembark and they would get into a horse and carriage, which would take them up to the top of lake, where they could then make a right into the gate, through the gate into the porte cochere, get off of that and get onto that funiculari, the funicular, and then take that up to the hotel. That was some
Needless
big
to say,
living for
they did crazy things back in those days, I'll tell you. But you know
it.
that's interesting, Steve, because that's one of the things that brought me to Altadena back in the 80s. I used to do a lot of hiking, and then I
Mm,
switched over to biking. So
mm.
I'm out on in the trails in back of JPL up in those mountains, and I look to my left, and here's Steve with a bunch of Boy Scouts. What the heck? You've been involved in so many different things.
Uh,
I can't imagine how you had time to be involved with the Boy Scouts.
well,
And we're way
you know,
deep into the woods.
yeah, just jarred my
Interesting.
memory on that, man.
Yeah,
Wow.
remember
Um,
that?
but because it's special, you know, because it's special. One of my best friends, Greg Ware, who was vice principal at Don Benito School, who's now retired and a stand-up comic, but he told me the story of his twin brother, their older brother Jeffrey, and their sister Dee Dee had a job shoveling horse manure out of this stable up in Altadena. And the
Mm,
owner, in exchange, gave them riding privileges, so they would ride and up into the, into the mountain. And I think, what Black kids get that experience, the childhood experience. I mean, this is just a special place.
that's right.
Um, Dee Dee ended up being such a good horsewoman that she was competing, and those things were
Mm,
made possible by, the freedom to be you in this space.
that's right. Yeah,
That,
very
that's
interesting.
that's something that I'm really praying that we can hold on to.
Yeah.
Um,
I know you got more questions, huh?
I got I got Tibby whispered in my ear metaphorically
She
about
said
her.
you she said move on, probably.
Move on. Um, so there's a technical question, and again, this is one that Tibby offered, and her background as a investigative journalist was helpful in sussing out some
Mhm.
important, and give Tibby her just due. Um, but she wants to know, how can we protect Altadena from ongoing climate change and or our future fires, and how to protect against them, a discussion within the community. How are we looking at this challenge in terms of materiality, in terms of landscape, in terms of siting,
Mm,
in the houses that you're looking at, are you looking at fire resistant materials or best
mhm.
practices?
Yeah. Well, you have to. The codes are really originally, I have to say, originally designed to get people out of a building. The rating of the walls, doors and what have you. So you don't burn up in the building. Now we're protecting the buildings from being burned up. Now, I don't know in a fire like this if it's going to help anyway, because if you got dry conditions like this, then you have winds at 190 to 100 miles an hour. It's like a blowtorch blowing over everything. I don't know if anybody saw the program called Weathered on PBS. I happened to be in that a little bit. There's a couple of
I saw
clips.
you.
Anyway, anyway, well, what the guy said, even if I had 1,000 more men out there, it wouldn't have helped.
Mhm.
You know, there's no way you could fight a fire like that. So I I know that something had to be done, yeah, as far as fire resistant. And there's a few things that I think are really going to help for a fire like this. You know, the type of vents that you use, definitely the type of exterior materials on the roofing, you know,
Mhm.
Class A roofing. The
Mhm.
thing about you know, the plants next to the building, I think that's just so minimal. I don't think I mean, you're not going to plant, you know, things that's going to burn the building up anyway. But you know, 5 foot away from the building is okay. But I think if you have cactus and what have you, these things don't even burn. I got cactus at my house that's coming back. It's in bloom right now. It's like it's
Mhm.
crazy.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
nature's resilient, man.
yeah, I
Nature.
think they will actually help retard a fire. They're not going to burn. But anyway, there are a few things in, you know, chapter 7A of the building code, you know, with the new requirements and what have you. I think that's going to be helpful in saving the buildings. It's not going to save all buildings, but it'll help.
Yeah.
In a fire like this, you know, you can't expect
No,
too many things to survive, because
as
if
I
you look,
understand.
and actually, you know, the fire had to travel along wind waves, wind patterns, because you'll see houses burned up completely, and then there's this little house just standing there. It's like it's the same construction. Why
Yeah,
is it standing? I don't
yeah,
think it had
yeah.
anything to do with the type of material that it was. It's just the fire just missed it. You know,
Luck, just luck.
it's amazing.
Um, and as I understand, the members entered homes through those attic vents, and homes burned from the inside out, which is
Right?
tragic,
Yeah,
right?
got in through the vents.
Our house has a crawl space, right? And the crawl space is vented. Now we have old school 1920s fine wire mesh, um, vent protection,
Galvanized.
but the smoke entered through there into that lower crawl space and then just migrated up into the rest of the house.
I see.
We didn't get a lot of smoke penetration through the exterior windows because we had replaced them over the course of a couple of years with those Anderson replacement windows, and they had a really nice tight seal. But
Excuse me.
as that smoke migrated up, and also from the attic side, all that stuff has to be remediated, and it's a bit frustrating to be out for this long. Oh, you have a house, but you can't go back and live in it. We go
Yeah.
back and collect mail and stuff. Matter of fact, to your earlier story, um, that next morning, because we evacuated voluntarily Tuesday night too, and like you, had no thought that this could have happened this way. And we drove back up, and this was before they had established the security perimeter. And when we turned onto New York Drive, to our astonishment, trees and homes were burning. And as I
Wow.
looked down, because we're halfway down that street between El Molino and Lake, and as I
Yeah.
looked down that block, this dark cloud of smoke, I sort of instinctively drove into it and up into our driveway just in time to see the shed in my next door neighbor's backyard fully ablaze. And
Wow.
looked at Jill and I said, "This might be the last time we see our house or go in it, and we have to go retrieve some stuff."
Mm.
So it's funny because we were both scheduled to go to Detroit to surprise our daughter for her 40th birthday on January 9th.
Mm.
Well, obviously, Jill prepared, had the case already packed. So when we ran into the house to get stuff, all I had to do was grab her suitcase. She had stuff that she could live with for the next, however long. Me, on
Mm.
the other hand, I had to like grab a few random pairs of underwear and socks and run the hell out of there. Well, when I got to the car and threw it in the car, I was looking, where is she at? And I go back to the front door, and she's in the dining room at the table, like going through mail and looking at stuff. And I was like, no, you don't get it. We gotta go. So
That's amazing.
that was that was that was our experience,
Yeah.
which again was fight or flight. I mean, just wow, how do
Yeah.
you even process that? Even at this point, it's hard to think about that.
Yeah. It is hard to imagine. And I'll tell you, I've heard some stories from some of our friends, and they're a lot worse than mine. I'll tell you that much.
Mm, mm,
Because I've had friends tell me that because they couldn't see anything, they were turning into driveways. They're thinking it was a street,
mm,
you know. And then there was a friend of my wife's, her daughter, who panicked, and instead of going she just kind of wandered around Altadena, and
Mm,
her parents or somebody had to come and find her, you know, and tell her, show her how to get out of there. And most of the car was melting. Anything plastic on the car was already melted. So there's a lot of
yeah,
stories like that where people just panicked.
yeah. Well,
Hey guys, I
getting
did want
close
to
to
jump
that
in really
time,
quick. Yeah, sorry. I just want to jump in really quick, just a reminder, just in a couple more minutes. So maybe if you guys wanted to address one more question between you two, and then we could move into Q&A from the audience. We've got a lot of really great questions in the chat, and folks will have an opportunity to raise their hands and unmute and ask questions. So thank you guys.
And no problem.
yeah, I
Maybe
would,
one more question
I,
or
I
any
would
more?
just say, each of us could offer kind of a closing remark and then open it up for the questions and honor our audience. So I would just say that, the spirit of Altadena is strong. I'm committed, as many of us are, to, carrying the righteous torch, on behalf of our residents, and do what we can to, set ourselves on a course. It'll be a long one that will take us to a destination that, is of our making and not, subject to, the free market capitalist winds that might blow in next.
Right. And that's the thing that we have to look out for, Steve. Um, the people who want to take advantage of it. Like I said, there's some good groups out there who are really trying to help, trying to prevent that. And so I'd like to be a part of that group that prevents it. And I'd like to see Altadena build back and build back better than it was before even, and have the same type of atmosphere that it had originally. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll take questions now.
Great. Thank you guys so much for that discussion. I know we had some questions dropped in the chat. I did my best to capture some, but not all. I know there were some really great discussions happening in the chat as well among the attendees, which is really great. So I can either read some of those questions from the chat or we can take raised hands. I don't know if there's any preference. I can go down my list.
Okay.
So one of the first questions I grabbed from the chat, and if folks want to raise their hands and jump in, they can, and we'll do our best to kind of navigate between those two methods. But someone in the chat had wrote, I'm not sure how the drawings are being permitted when there are codes that need to be updated in light of these fires. Do either of you have any thoughts on that?
What was that again? You don't see how code should be updated in lieu of what has happened?
I can
Not
jump in.
sure.
I
Oh
can
yeah,
jump in.
please.
Okay. Hi. So I have been hearing that some few homes in Palisades have already got permits. So my question is, how did they get permits when the codes are still being updated, or they need to be updated? There are a lot of exterior assemblies, especially that needs attention. That's what my question is.
Well, the codes are, we still have to comply with the latest code. That's the bottom line, and that's how things are getting permitted now. If there's any new code addition, then that has to be incorporated in the next code requirement. Now, there's some items that they're going to require, like sprinklers or fire sprinklers, Chapter 7A of the building code, the things that we mentioned, keeping vegetation 5 feet away from the building, hardening the building, as what they call it, with material that is less flammable. Example, your roof may have to have 5/8 type X-jib board on top of your plywood prior to your felt paper and shingles, if that's what you're using. It'll be items like that that are going to be required.
And it also, probably, as the architect, knowing that you're
tomorrow and Friday, so that is not okay.
Yes. Okay.
designing for
What
yourself
was that?
and others, going beyond code where it makes sense. as far as material selection choices and, other kinds of considerations that you might anticipate being rolled into the next code cycle, but haven't arrived there yet, just would be considered best practices.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Moving on to the next question. If Altadena development was done with similar buildings, are there prototypes that would help reduce costs and maximize efficiency?
Put it this way, there's no prototypes right now, but apparently there will be prototypes. And I just hope whatever prototype they use is in good taste with the design of Altadena and what people want to see. So I mean, there's all kinds of ideas that are coming up right now. Some are prefabricated buildings, some are panelized buildings. There's even been some thought about doing these what do you call them? Printed buildings, 3D
3D
printed
printed.
buildings. Yeah.
Well,
Anyway, I mean, if it fits with the topography, if it fits with the design, I mean, I'd have to see it first before I make a judgment on it. But we don't want any cookie cutter homes in Altadena. Let me put it that way.
So let me also respond that because I've become an advisor to Alex Athenson and the Foothill Catalog Group, who set out right away to try to define the styles of homes that were prevalent in Altadena, whether it's craftsman bungalow, Spanish Mission, red tile roof, or in the 70s, the ranch homes. Was your house on Scripps or ranch?
What's that again? My house?
Charles?
Oh,
Your
was.
house was on Scripps.
It's kind of hard to say what that thing was, I'll tell you, but it was decent looking. It was, I'd say, mid-century, kind of I don't know.
Well, the point being that that Foothill Catalog has also invited design proposals from anyone in the public, and they'll be adjudicated and decided upon which are most appropriate, at which point they'll pre-approval from the county for the basic design package that then could streamline the permitting process and allow maybe some of the compliance to happen at the inspection level. So they are the most sort of advanced group talking about standardized plans that I'm aware of.
Right. And like I say, I think that it has a possibility of working in many cases. We have to keep in mind that Altadena has such a variation in lot size. They have a lot of flag lots. They have a lot of large lots. I happen to be on a large lot. Some are very small, but then they also have such a variation in topography. Remember, it's in the foothills. So in many cases, this type of building, well, yeah, it's like I say, it's going to work in some cases, but it's not going to work in all cases. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, you're well-to-do living up in the topography. Many of us are down in the flatlands. So they've been
Anything in
decimated.
Altadena is not flatland. It's all
true.
on the hill.
That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, but how the fabric, how the missing pieces get filled in, it's going to be very, very interesting. And I think that there's enough variety that will at least, we don't want Orange County nor shade on Orange County, but we don't want the cookie cutters that look all the same. They just painted a different color or whatever. They need to be responsive to the topography, to the land, to the kind of history of variety in the community.
That's right. Yeah.
Great, thank you both so much. I'm going to combine a couple questions here. So where do you recommend reaching out to offer free services for those who are not financially able? I mean, a kind of a second parter would be, do licensed architects who want to volunteer need to be licensed in California?
Yeah, I think they're going to require, the building department would require a licensed architect in California. You could be licensed anywhere, but you're going to have to get a license in California to practice. Well, let me put it this way. You can go in as a designer here, and then you can hire a structural engineer or something, out of state. So
for a single family home, yeah.
What's that, Steve?
for a single family home. You don't
For a
have to.
single family home, yes. Yeah,
Um,
doesn't require a licensed architect.
And in terms of where people can go to seek financial assistance, I think Charles leaned into that a little bit earlier in the conversation from the Federal Reserve building meeting he was at yesterday, where these lending institutions are trying to offer ways that they can sort of close the gap between what an insurance settlement that an underinsured settlement might need to make them owner whole.
Yeah, this was called Project Reach, and they had various financial institutions there and coming up with ways to do this. So, if anybody wants a further information on that, I could probably email it to AIA or you know, tell you how to get in touch with the people who are offering these services.
Thank you guys. Yeah, any resources either of you have, feel free to send them to me and I can always post them on the AI California website. Thank you. So another question, this one is more focused on about rebuilding community beyond just housing, parking spaces, community hubs, programs, etc., that made Altadena so special. The question, they're from also native Altadena, and they don't want to lose sight of the broader fabric of the community. So they were curious about your thoughts on that.
You want to take that, Steve?
I'm sorry, I was distracted reading Will Wright's chat message. So
no problem. I can reread it and summarize. Yeah.
Reread the question. Yeah.
Sure. How are you both thinking about rebuilding community in Altadena beyond housing, including community hubs, programs, etc.?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is in terms of civic public open space. The other is in terms of commercial and retail, which I know that our colleague, friend Juliana Delgado has been leading an effort to look at the retail on North Lake Avenue, but it stops up at around Woodbury and doesn't go further. Well, they've done a lot of work there, and I think we're going to be meeting to look at whether it's translatable to the northern part of Lake and meeting with business owners in terms of what was problematic for them before the fire. A lot of it is about parking and how we can maintain a sort of character and then find ways to accommodate, vehicle parking, say behind stores and so forth, which we see in some of the other quaint little downtown village type settings. I think that in terms of civic space, like the Altadena Library, that restores some hope and provides some peace to us who've lost so much, to be able to go into that space and just feel grounded there. Another one that's been in conversation is Farnsworth Park, which is a WPA era park, that the main structure being a large craftsman sort of lodge building that burned, and the only thing still standing are the Riverstone foundations and chimney. How a place that was used by so many residents and cherished could be restored in the short term. And so landscape may play, a big role initially, because again, we have this interim period. John Chan, who's one of our cohorts, and he may be on this call, I'm not sure, was floating in, this notion of, in the past, Altadena had vast California poppy blooms, so much so that ships out at sea could see orange in the foothills from a distance and use it as a sort of a guiding beacon, and just like do a mass planting of poppy seeds all over everywhere. And while nothing's being built, at least we get colorful flowers coming out of the ground that harken back to Altadena's past. So, I mean, there's really wonderful ideas that are being circulated out there, some good, some not good, some doable, some not doable. But the fact that we're thinking deeply about how to bring his culture into the thought process of the physical rebuilding is very, very important.
Yeah, we lost so many trees. I mean, those deodora trees, and so many various plant types that, we're going to have to really work on that. And again, that's one of the things that brought people to Altadena. It's got more greenery than most places in California.
For sure.
Great points. Thank you both. we'll probably be able to take another one more question, and we actually did have a hand raised. So I will hand it over to George, who has his hand raised to ask their question.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. Do you have any input on if someone does a like-for-like rebuild, what zoning and planning requirements they're going to be held to? Are they going to be held to zoning and planning regulations that are current or that were enforced at the time of the original construction of the house?
At the time of the original construction of the house. So you won't have to meet the Altadena community standards, which is, you know, some more zoning requirements that would put you in the category. If you go beyond the 10%, you'll have to meet the new standards, and that could be a variety of things. It could limit your backyard. It could limit your height, setback requirements, and many other items. So it would be best to stay within that 10% margin.
So just to clarify that you know, you have a home of 2,000 square feet, you're allowed to add another 10% of that. So you could have a new house of 2,200 square feet and stay within the grandfathered sort of layout of the site.
Right.
And you're also, your tax assessment, I believe, stays where it was.
Right, the tax that they would void any additional taxes on that as well.
All right, well, thank you very much for answering that.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy Sims in the chat says you can increase your square footage with an ADU that does not count.
That's right.
Eligible. So
that is correct.
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
Thank
Charles,
you both.
We had a great
sorry,
conversation for 40 minutes and answered some questions, brother. Got to see each other, which is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, thanks everybody. You know, we enjoyed it.
Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you both so much to Charles and Stephen for such a great conversation today. Being very open, fantastic questions between you both and from the audience as well. If you've made it this far, AI California will submit you for AI credit, and you'll receive follow-up information on how you can receive a certificate. Today's session was recorded, and any additional resources we gather will be posted on the AI California website. Thank you again both so much to Charles and Stephen, and hope everyone has a great day.
You too.
Right.
All right, bye now.
Thanks,
See you later,
everyone.
Steve. We'll talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.